Okay, we're going to introduce our fourth team here, Speak2 Systems. This is Ori Belson and Tim Buttigieg.
So, hello, my name is Ori Belson.
My name is Tim Buttigieg. We're from Speak2 Systems, and we're here to give back control to intubated patients.
So every single year in the United States, there are about 800,000 patients who are intubated. Of these, about 430,000 patients wake up. They're aware, but they cannot communicate. They come from a variety of backgrounds, which include heart treatments, knee surgeries, car crashes, and any other complication that can happen during surgery. What is the problem? So we're going to walk you through a patient we call Samantha. Samantha wakes up in the hospital, and she's intubated, meaning she has an endotracheal tube placed between her vocal cords, making it so that she cannot communicate. She then becomes anxious, stressed, and frustrated from not being able to communicate. Using current practices, doctors would try to communicate with her. They would try to figure out what she wants and what she needs, but often fail. What do they resort to? Sedating her. They give her sedation medication to help calm her down and lower the stress, the frustration, and the anxiety. So what is Speak2 Systems, and what is our solution? Right next to Tim, you see our device, but our goal is to improve the quality of care for intubated patients by helping them communicate. We do so using our proprietary technology, and it has 2 finger sensors, one signaling yes, one signaling no, a headset or speaker that speaks into the patient's head, as well as the system itself that does all of the communication. A patient such as Samantha would wake up, and the first thing she would want to do if she was aware and awake is communicate something. Let's say she taps a finger. The system would turn on. It would ask, "Are you in pain?" She then can answer either a yes or a no with either of the finger sensors. Let's say in this situation she taps yes. It would ask, "Is the pain below your waist?" In this case, it's not, so let's say she taps no. It would say, "Is pain in your throat?" Samantha says, "This is where the pain is." So she taps the yes finger, and it would finally say, "Patient in room 5 is experiencing pain in their throat." At this point, it would be able to communicate to the family member, doctor, or nurse this issue via text, email, WhatsApp, or print it at a nurse print station. Here are photos from our clinical trial in January, where we were able to actually test it on real patients. And this is something that we're very proud of, because it took us about a year to get the device fully ready to do this clinical trial. On your left, you see a patient who's actually using the system while intubated, and on your right, you see the head nurse of the intensive care unit trying it out and giving us feedback as well. We have a large amount of accomplishments that we're very proud of that have been made over the past year that include working with different hospitals, such as Stanford, Rambam, and Kaplan. We've been able to work with different intubated patients while they're intubated and while they weren't intubated, with doctors, administrators, and we're able to save about 5 to 15 minutes per interaction. So why this big range? Our data is slim at this moment. We're trying to grow it, but the point is that using the Speak2 system, patients are able to communicate their want and need. So Samantha was able to say, "I have pain in my throat," and the doctor can come in immediately and help her at that instant with that issue. Without the system, the doctor would usually try to come in, figure out what the want and need of the patient is, leave the room, get the supplies, and come back. So this is one of our most important factors. We've been also able to, after the clinical trial, get feedback from the doctors who told us that they were very interested in purchasing the device. We at the time were not ready to sell, but we're hoping to get there in the coming months. And our goal of helping patients communicate their wants and needs were successfully accomplished. And this was able to improve their quality of care.
The business model has 2 components. The first is the system itself, seen here, which retails for $2,500. This is a one-time cost per system. So say, for example, Ori is a hospital administrator. It would be one $2,500 purchase per bed he intends to implement the system to. Based on our research, we estimate that the max growth for profits would be about $183 million. The other, as Ori mentioned, was the finger sensors and the headset. These retail for $35 per patient, and they require some forecasting on behalf of the hospital to ensure they have enough for each system and each patient. Again, based on our research, we estimate that our profits could reach almost $11 million. It's important to note that the statistics that were behind me represent just the US market, and that the global market is 3 times larger. And since many of our clinical trials have been outside the US, there is potential to reach those markets. Aside from Ori and myself, we have a team of numerous advisors from doctors, entrepreneurial, and engineering advisors helping us to perfect the system and ensure that each patient that comes in contact has a positive experience. Some other noteworthy points: we've recently received first round funding from the Dorm Room Fund, and we have a provisional patent. Additionally, we've been in many competitions over the last year, most noteworthy of which is the Global Student Entrepreneurship Awards in New York City.
So what is our go-to market strategy? We have 4 different points that we're trying to address. The first is actually going into hospital bed manufacturers and selling it as a component of the bed. And for this, we're trying to reach out to Stryker and Hillrom, the 2 leading hospital bed manufacturers. I personally used to work for Stryker, so I have contacts there, and we have contacts that we're working with at Hillrom to figure out what the best way of approaching this sales strategy is. The second is actually selling directly to the hospitals. So this is going to the value-added committee, figuring out how much they'd be willing to pay for it, and then from there working our way to actually selling it per bed and per patient in the intensive care unit. The third is selling it directly to a patient. So if they're at a hospital that doesn't have the system, they can purchase the device and just have it there. If they know they're going to be intubated and aware, or if their family member is, they can also reach out and purchase it. And the last, which is one of the most important ones for us, is actually getting insurance companies on board. So this has 2 major reasons. One, because if we're able to actually help patients communicate and control environmental factors, we're able to lower down hospital-induced infections potentially, and also ventilator-related pneumonia. And through these, hospitals will be able to potentially subsidize the cost for the finger sensors and headset. Our competition ranges from very simple devices to more complicated ones. 2 of the more simple ones are a whiteboard and easy board. So this is just writing something or pointing at an emoji. The issue with these are very simple. Imagine you're connected to multiple tubes and wires and your eyes may be shut. You could be aware and awake, but you still can't communicate because you don't really know what's going on around you and you can't see. So writing something down would be very difficult. The other component that's wrong with these, or very difficult with these, is someone needs to be in the room to understand what is going on. If no one is there, then you're basically pointing at something and it's not helping the patient at all. So more sophisticated technologies have been invented, such as Zuvo, but the issue with this is you have to control with your eyes, which requires a lot of focus, and you have to use a motion finger sensor, which requires a lot of fine motor skills, and a lot of patients don't have this ability. So Speak2 Systems solve this by only requiring a yes or no tap. Patients can have their eyes closed, it talks in their ear. Not only can they communicate efficiently and effectively, they can control the room around them, such as the lights, the television, the bed position, and the temperature. And they also can solve their disorientation. So the system can tell when they're becoming stressed, and it would let them know where they are, how long they've been there, et cetera, which is one of the pinpoints many of the medical staff have told us that they want to be included. Why we're unique is we have intellectual property, and we've grown a network of advisors with hospitals. 2, we're a very simple solution for an expensive problem. 3, we're the only system that does the 3 things of helping patients communicate efficiently and effectively with our methods. 2, help them control environmental factors, and 3, solve their disorientation. And these 3 together are very important for the patient's physical and mental state. And lastly, we're completely customizable. So if the patient or hospital wants to remove a node or a question, you can easily remove it, and the tree reconfigures to figure this out. And we also currently work in 4 languages. So if a patient speaks, for example, French, but a doctor speaks English, it would communicate with the patient in French and translate the final message to the doctor in English, help solving the translation problem between different patients. Our future plans have 2 components. We currently got notice today from our attorney that our C corporation was officially approved in Delaware, so we're really excited about that. We also have a provisional patent, and we are working to get a utility patent in the coming months. As Tim said, we've been able to secure funding from First Round Capital's Dorm Room Fund, but we're hoping to gain access to more VCs and work with them. We have a clinical trial planned for April, and we're hoping to see the improvements we've made since the January trial, how they've improved the system. We also hope to sell 65 systems by May 2020 to specific hospitals, and then hopefully grow from there. To do this, we're going to need to grow the team, and we're hoping to communicate with hospital bed manufacturers. So here's an example of how the system works. If the volume's on, you would hear it talk to the patient. It would ask a simple question.
To start the system, at any point, press either a yes or no with the finger sensors.
So then the patient can answer yes or no by tapping yes or no, and it would ask a question.
Are you experiencing discomfort such as pain, itching, or numbness?
So let's say they tap yes.
Yes. Is the discomfort under your waist?
And they basically work their way down until they get to a final answer, which would then send it to the doctor or nurse. Once again, we are Speak2 Systems. We're hoping on improving the quality of care for intubated patients by helping them communicate. My name is Ori Belson.
I'm Tim Buttigieg. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and we'll now welcome your feedback.
Fabulous presentation, clear, to the point, and if anybody's wondering how this fits into a hospitality school presentation, I believe it's the ultimate hospitality. Hospital can show, as Giuseppe said, hospital and itty, so hospitality, it definitely gives patients a voice in their care. You answered many or most of my questions. It's an excellent plan. You have a very conservative plan of growth. So I was curious what your barriers, you didn't really have a section about barriers to entry and, so you have to sort of intuit it. Can you talk to that a little?
Yeah, so currently we've been doing our clinical testing, as he said, abroad. And the reasoning was it's easier to get into hospitals and get what we need done in order to actually test it on real patients. To sell in the US, we have two current things that we're needing to do. One is get FDA Class 1 exempt. And from our attorney, we don't think this is going to really be an issue because we're going to be able to follow past hospital nurse communication devices, but we do need to get this done. And the second is get this other certification, which is IC 60601. And if we're able to get these two things completed, then I think we're going to be able to enter the space and actually start selling in the US. What's going to be difficult in the first stage, in my opinion, is actually convincing the value-added committee why they need the device and how it could help them, because they'll understand why it's helping the patient, but why it's helping them. And with that, we're hoping in April to grow our data to say how much time we actually save the hospital staff. And if we have those numbers, we believe we're going to be able to sell directly to the hospital.
To also clarify Ori's point, some of the barriers to entry are the utility patents that we're currently applying for, as that is hugely important when we
Utility what?
Utility patent.
The utility patent.
The utility.
The patent on the right.
You have you have an application in.
Correct.
So you're looking for a non-provisional patent.
Correct. We currently have the provisional.
What is the timing of that, and can you roll this out with, sometimes you see like a patent pending?
Yeah, so once we actually apply for the utility patent, so right now we have the provisional. So our focus is to actually apply for the utility, and the reasoning for that is once we've actually applied, then if we get approved, we would have 20 years of the utility patent where we'd be protected. The process to actually get approved would depend on a few different scenarios, but we believe that once we actually get the submission in, we can start working to figure out how to sell it.
What could be a downside or a weakness that could create a risk, a competitive risk?
Yeah,
Specifically for competitors or interaction with patients?
No, for you as a company.
As a company?
So one of the risks that could happen potentially is if it doesn't work. So something that we've been learned from a January trial, this is I guess a learning experience, was in January the system was using the internet. So every message the patient conveyed, it would send a message to the cloud, and then it would send the data back, and then it would say that what the patient was trying to say. We're trying to get that not to use the internet because the hospitals have varying internet speeds. So our current focus is getting the system to work completely without needing any connection to the internet. So an issue could be if we don't do that, then there could be a fault between the time between the patient answers to when it actually communicates. So if we're in a hospital that has bad internet, it wouldn't work. But we're hoping to solve that in the coming months to get it to work without need of internet. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Okay.
So you have a funding request, and what returns? I noticed in your financials, you really took it out just to the first year. You didn't run it out into the future, although you did have some estimates up there. No. So what kind of a return? First of all, who are you looking for an investor, and what kind of a return can they expect?
Okay, yeah. So currently, the investors we're looking for are people who have access to the healthcare space and who've worked with past healthcare companies. I guess another point that's just a side point, something that's very important for us is adding someone to the team who has grown a medical device startup, and we're very focused on that because we think we need another individual to also be on the team to be the selling point. And then what was the 5-year plan? What they can get on returns?
Yes.
So initially, I could bring you to our actual, where's the slide? I believe on the actual sale of the device, it costs us $160 to make, and we sell it for $2,500. And it costs us $10 to make the finger sensors and headset, and we sell those for $35. So we actually have pretty high profits, and then you could take it from here.
We have pretty high profit margins on it. At the moment, a lot of our funding has been a result of competition winnings and venture capital funding sources. When we enter, we're trying to be more conservative in hitting our sales goals that we can actually accomplish. For example, the 65 that we intend to sell by 2020. On that, we're looking at revenue of about $200,000 by May, so it could totally vary. As both Ori and I have some changes coming as we graduate, there could be some other unanticipated expenses. Currently, I think we're looking at the 5 to 10% range.
And are you talking here when you have your expenses, is that for the device itself? It's for basically the hardware and the software, and there's...
So it's 3 things.
Are there any overhead costs associated with this and sales costs? Can you talk about that a little bit?
It's built into the expenses. So as Ori was hinting to, it doesn't cost us all that much to produce the product itself, but we're currently encountering some legal fees with the utility patent and with the C Corp. So there are quite a few one-time fees that we could certainly use some more funding to accomplish at the moment.
When you go to protect your patent, your legal fees will skyrocket.
Yeah.
So have you thought about that?
Yeah.
What are your other strategies? For instance, if you're talking to the bed manufacturers, patents give you a very narrow window of protection.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So how are you thinking about, are you trying to go to a company with a higher, profound moral compass that isn't going to just try to knock off this idea? And you also talked about syncing it in your plan, syncing it with the remote in the room, which often doesn't work. And I think that's a great idea, just make it part of the bed. But talk a little bit more about how you protect yourselves. So
the actual patent is on a few different aspects. It's on the actual device, the 2 finger sensors, and the communication method of how it works. And our patent attorney said that he, after doing some research and basically a background check, he thinks this will work. And why we think selling directly to hospital bed manufacturers would help, in a sense, is the fact that a lot of them are currently, so Stryker and Hillrom, the 2 leading ones, they're reaching out to grow their communication devices. So they have, for example, iConnect is a branch they're creating, and they're hoping to get their hospital beds to communicate with the hospital staff. Another advisor of ours is the CEO of EarlySense, and he currently sells his device to Hillrom. And what he was telling us was it's a very big point for them today to have communication methods that are easy for the hospital bed manufacturer, to have another selling point of we're not just a hospital bed, we're a bed that can control the whole room and communicate outside of the room. So by working with them, we're hoping to basically get in quickly. Is your end game to sell it to them? So our end game is one of the 4 strategies, and we're currently, as we're pivoting, we're trying to figure out what the right path is. Our current goal is to reach out to these hospital bed manufacturers and go to them. If that doesn't work, then we are going to try to sell directly to hospitals and to patients. Have you actually spoken to an insurance company? Because they're not really strong on preventative care. Yeah. Less than HMI. I can't really see them thinking they need to pay for this. Yeah, so currently we have not talked to insurance companies. However, as our medical advisors told us and the companies that have helped us, they said that they think that from their experience of getting approval from insurance companies, they think that if we have enough data, which again we're hoping to get in April, that we can start those conversations with them. And the reason why we haven't started those conversations was because we don't want to come into the conversation like not prepared. So the moment we start growing our actual knowledge on how much time we save patients, how much we can actually bring down these complication rates, and this is something that the head of ICU told us, was that if you can bring it down by 1%, every insurance company is going to want this because that's going to bring down their cost extensively. So we're just trying to grow the information we have before we start that conversation so we come into it prepared. Have you thought about approaching a teaching hospital? So that's part of this. So 65 systems that we're trying to sell. We're trying to reach out to 3 bigger hospitals, and those are going to be teaching hospitals. And the goal of that is to reach out to bigger intensive care units that have a lot of influence on other intensive care units around the country. So once we can enter those 3 specific hospitals, which are going to probably be teaching hospitals, we're going to be able to grow it out, and people are going to grow from there, basically. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.